Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to Season 2 Part 4. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. The internships went on quite smoothly. Izuku and Todoroki were immediately put into action by Endeavor, who wasted no time showing them the ropes. The Flame Hero said that he was going to show them what makes a hero, and that they were going to go and search for the hero killer. Both teens were a little shocked to hear this, but they immediately disregarded it when realizing that they were with the number 2 hero and that he probably wants to impress them. There was one thing that bothered Izuku, however, and it was that Stain was in Hasu. That alone wouldn't be something to worry about. But one thing changed that fact. It was that Ida had chosen to intern in Hasu right after his brother had been attacked by the hero killer. There wasn't any concrete proof that showed a connection between the two factors, but it was a possibility. Hey, Midoriya, a gruff voice exclaimed, knocking Izuku out of his thoughts. The green-haired boy looked to see that it was Endeavor, looking back at him as he was walking. I know that Shoto hasn't picked one yet, but I never heard your hero name, the Flame Hero said, sounding as neutral as he could. Izuku was a little thrown off by this, but he quickly recovered as he responded by saying, my hero name is Invincible. With a proud voice, Endeavor giggled, until he burst out laughing before asking, Invincible, isn't that a little optimistic? With laughter still in his voice, Izuku frowned in annoyance upon hearing this, as he looked at the Flame Hero and said, that's rich coming from you, Endeavor. With a voice that showed his annoyance, Endeavor seemed to be completely unaffected by this, as he just ignored Izuku's words and continued to laugh. Izuku got even more annoyed after seeing this reaction, and it showed on his expression, but he didn't get to think or say anything else until Todoroki quietly asked, are you okay, Midoriya? With a hushed tone, Izuku was confused by this, but it wasn't solely because of Todoroki's question. The bi-colored teen was whispering, as if he didn't want his father to hear them from behind his back. The green-haired boy showed his confusion, as he whispered back, I'm fine, why are you asking? With a hushed tone, Todoroki looked towards Endeavor after hearing this, making sure that he hadn't noticed them yet, as he responded by saying, you spaced out earlier. I wondered if there was something on your mind. With a tone that was still hushed, Izuku was a little thrown off by this, but he really shouldn't have been. It's only natural for Todoroki to wonder what was happening, but thinking back at it made him worried once again. Yeah, there is something on my mind. It's about Ida. His brother was attacked and crippled not too long ago, the green-haired boy whispered, his voice showing his concern. Todoroki did not expect to hear this, as he also showed some worry before saying, I see. That has to be tough on him. With a voice that was still hushed, Izuku kept his expression, as he continued to voice his concern. Yeah, but there's more to it. His brother was attacked by Stain, and Stain is in Hasu. Now guess where Ida is interning, the green-haired boy whispered, his voice not changing in the slightest. Todoroki was confused at first, but he quickly showed a look of dreaded realization as he said, Hasu, out loud. The bi-colored teen hadn't whispered that last part, therefore it didn't go unnoticed by Endeavor. The Flame Hero turned towards them with his usual demeanor, inspecting them both as he did. Both teens remained silent the entire time, until he turned his eyes forward once more. We need to keep an eye on him, Todoroki then whispered, confident that his father wouldn't hear him. Izuku nodded in response to this, as he said, my thoughts exactly. With a hushed tone, before he started to float instead of walk, both teens then turned their full attention ahead. As they walked and hovered just behind the back of the number 2 hero, the trio continued to patrol for a few more days, all with nothing to show. The teens were starting to think that they wouldn't find the hero killer at all, which would be a good thing for Ida's sake, but they couldn't tell how Endeavor felt about it. The Flame Hero hadn't said or done anything to show doubt, but they still haven't gotten any form of results. One thing was for certain, however, it was that Endeavor was trying to reconnect with his son. It was abundantly clear to both Izuku and Todoroki that Endeavor was trying to reach out and impress his son, but he was trying a little too hard. It also didn't help that whenever the Flame Hero attempted anything, his son would just ignore him. Todoroki seemed to have no interest in reconnecting with his father, at least on the surface. Izuku didn't know what went on the head of his bi-colored friend, but he could imagine that it was some sort of conflict. Todoroki had decided to remain formal with father during the internship, but how long could that last? The two of them may have some horrible history between themselves, but they were still father and son. There must be a part of them both that wants to fix what's broken and move on. Izuku finished this thought as the night creeped over Hasu City, but that didn't stop them from searching. If anything, this is when they were actually trying to look. The hero killer was mostly active in the cover of the night. So this would be the most likely time for him to show his crimson-clad face. Keep your eyes peeled for anything suspicious. And be on guard. I don't encourage you to pick a fight with anyone, but you have my permission to use your quirks in case anything happens. Also remember that this isn't some exercise at school. So go straight for the throat, Endeavor then said, his voice being firm with nothing but seriousness. Izuku and Todoroki nodded in confirmation. The flame hero had something along those lines every night so far. And both teens understood the meaning of it. Anything could happen during the night. Therefore they had permission to use their quirks for self-defense if they ever needed to fight. They should end it quickly for the sake of themselves and everyone else. These principles were something that Izuku's father followed. And now it was his turn to do it. Look out, Todoroki then shouted in a panic, once again breaking Izuku out of his thoughts. The green-haired boy was confused by Todoroki's words. But that confusion quickly vanished when he noticed something big flying towards him. Izuku reacted on instinct, punching the creature away before registering what it was. It staggered back, as both teens froze when they realized what this thing was. It had a different shape, just as it had a different color. But they both recognized it from somewhere else. The green-haired boy could never forget this monster. The one that nearly killed both him and his classmates? Namu. The teens were quickly broken out of their shock when Endeavor grabbed onto the Namu's head before burning it to ash. What the hell was that thing? The flame hero exclaimed, not expecting anyone to answer him. Endeavor kept looking at the grotesque corpse in front of him, unsure of what to make of it, until Todoroki muttered something of interest. No way, is that? But didn't get to finish his question before Izuku responded by saying, no, it's different. This one was nearly put out of commission by just one of my punches. The other one could take a lot more than this. With a voice that sounded too calm for the situation, Todoroki didn't respond to this in any shape or form. But he understood what Izuku was saying. This only looked like the monster that they knew. It was a cheap, genetically inferior, knockoff version of the thing that attacked them. What are the two of you talking about? Do you recognize this thing? Endeavor asked, wondering what the two teens were doing. Izuku and Todoroki looked at the flame hero, as the green-haired boy answered by saying, sort of. We know something similar. It's called a Namu. I fought and killed a much stronger version of it during the USJ incident. With a voice that was too calm, Endeavor was shocked to hear this. But he also grew a little worried as he asked, how strong was the one that you fought? Izuku's expression turned from calm to pure seriousness, as he looked at Endeavor and said, the villains claimed it to be an all-might killing weapon. And I don't doubt that. I nearly died when fighting it. With a more serious tone, Endeavor was even more shocked after hearing this. He knew that Izuku was strong. He was Omni-Man's son after all. But that only made his worry grow. If there were any other Nomus in the city, there was a risk that one of them might be as strong as the one from the USJ, which meant that they had to deal with them. All right, then we need to stop all of them. You have experience, so I'll need your help, the flamer hero then said, aiming his words mostly towards Izuku. The teens were going to respond to this, but they stopped when they saw something that horrified them. In the distance they could see an orange light amidst the darkness, and they all immediately knew what it was. A building had caught fire, which meant that this wasn't just some stray Namu. The city was actually being attacked. The trio stood frozen in front of the flames for a few seconds, until they could see the silhouettes of heroes trying to control the situation. Among those figures was one that was familiar, Manuel, but that only led to more worry. I don't see Ida anywhere, Todoroki shouted, his voice showing a mixture of worry and frustration. Izuku caught on to this worry, but Endeavor was once again confused. Who are you talking about? The flame hero asked, once again being confused. Both teens looked at Endeavor. As Todoroki explained, our classmate is supposed to be interning with Manuel, but I don't see him anywhere. He might have gone after the hero killer to avenge his brother. With a voice that showed worry, Endeavor was even more shocked to hear this, for he knew that it wouldn't end well. The hero killer was a dangerous man, so he doesn't like the idea of teenagers going after him on their own. This left him with a conflict, however, for he knew what both of the teens wanted to do. They wanted to go and look for their friend, which was just a fancier way of saying that they were going to look for the hero killer. The flame hero gritted his teeth and clenched his fist, as he then spoke. All right, Shoto. You will go and look for this Ada. Send us your location if you encounter the hero killer, or if the situation gets dire. Invincible. I still need your help with the Nomus, but if Shoto ends up sending his location, I need you to get there as soon as possible. Remember what I told you earlier. And be careful, Endeavor shouted, his voice returning to his determined seriousness. Both Izuku and Todoroki were surprised to hear this. They expected Endeavor to tell them to focus on dealing with the Nomus. But they had been wrong. It turns out that Endeavor was a much different person than he seemed, one that seemed to understand their worries. What are you waiting for? Get moving, the flame hero then shouted, knocking both teens out of their thoughts. Izuku and Todoroki looked at each other, nodding as they did, before they turned to go and do what they were ordered to. Sponsorship. Honey. This video was sponsored by Honey. Honey is a free browser add-on available on Google, Opera, Firefox, Safari. If it's a browser, it has Honey. Honey automatically saves you money when you check out on sites like Amazon, Papa John's, and Kohl's. Wherever you shop, it's a good chance that Honey can save you money. All you have to do when you're checking out at these big sites is click that little orange button, and it will scan the entire internet and find discount codes for you. It takes 2 clicks to install Honey. Now anytime you check out, Honey will scan the whole internet and find coupon codes for you. If there is a coupon code, they will find it, and if there's not a coupon code, you can rest assured that you are getting the best price possible. If you install Honey right now, you can save so much money on your online shopping, doing nothing. There's no reason not to install Honey. It takes 2 clicks, 10 million people use it, 100,000 5-star reviews. Unless you hate money, you should install Honey. Use the link in the description to start saving money now. The trio split into 2 groups, one going to deal with the Nomus while the other went looking for Ada. Todoroki rushed as quickly as he could, keeping his eyes peeled for any sign of his classmate. He searched areas that the hero killer was known to hunt at, dark and secluded areas and alleys, all in an attempt to raise the likelihood of finding the person he was looking for. The bi-colored teen raced through the streets in a hurry, until he saw something in an alleyway. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it was what he was looking for, but it was also what he didn't want to find. Meanwhile, Izuku was helping Endeavor in dealing with the Namu problem. The teen turned out to be a big help, because almost none of the Nomus were on the same level as the one from the USJ. This meant that it was fairly easy for both him and Endeavor to defeat them, so there was next to no worry about that issue. The two continued fighting the beasts without any room to think about anything else, until something changed. Izuku had just defeated another weak Namu, when he suddenly got a notification on his phone. The green-haired boy looked, only to see that Todoroki had sent him his location. Not only that, he had done it twice while being in the same spot. This made Izuku worry a lot, for it could only mean that Todoroki had gotten very desperate for help. It didn't take long for Endeavor to also see this notification, and he might have gotten more worried than Izuku. Invincible, that's our cue to leave, the flame hero shouted, his voice showing just how urgent the situation seemed to be. Izuku only nodded towards Endeavor before he took off at top speed. There were still a few Nomus to defeat, but he was told to prioritize his classmates' well-being. Besides, there was no way that Endeavor would ever be defeated by these things. The green-haired boy flew as fast as he could towards Todoroki's location, passing many buildings and rooftops as he did. Eventually he made it to a dark alleyway, which was filled with the chaotic sounds of combat. Izuku didn't waste a second, as he dove down immediately. As he got closer, he saw someone who he could only imagine to be the hero killer dash past Todoroki's ice pillars, before swinging his sword at him. But right before the blade could make contact with the bi-colored teen, it suddenly stopped. Stain was confused, and so was Todoroki and Ida for a while. But the teen's confusion quickly vanished once they saw what had happened. The blade had made contact with something, but it wasn't Todoroki. It was skin that it had been swung at, but it couldn't do as much as put a scratch at it. Stain was overwhelmed with shock. As he looked at this person, it was someone he didn't recognize, and he had somehow appeared out of nowhere. The mysterious green-haired boy looked at the hero killer with a passive smile, as he said, "Nice sword," before flicking his finger towards the blade. The sword shattered like glass, sending shards flying all over the alleyway. Stain was wide-eyed after seeing this, as he immediately jumped back. "Midoriya, what are you doing here?" the wounded and paralyzed Ida shouted, his voice clearly showing frustration. Izuku was completely unaffected by this, keeping his gaze onto the hero killer as he said, "What does it look like?" "I'm saving your sorry ass." With a calm voice, Ida didn't say anything in response to this, for he was defeated. He came here for revenge, but had to be saved by 2 of his classmates. There was only one thing that was reassuring about this situation, and that was that the hero killer was definitely being captured tonight. Stain was carefully analyzing the green-haired newcomer, for he looked familiar in some way. The way he floated above the ground, his posture, His power, his attitude, and his aura, it all reminded him of someone else. The hero killer smiled after this realization. As he said, "You show great promise. Not only do you show the true colors of a hero, but you're just like him. You're just like one of the only true heroes in this world." Omni-Man, with a sadistic smile on his face, Izuku seemed to be unaffected by the sadism. As he tilted his head and said, "Is it really that obvious?" with a voice that showed that he was oblivious. Everyone in the alleyway was confused by Izuku's response, for it seemed that he wasn't worried or afraid at all. It was silent for a while, until the green-haired boy sighed and said, "Look, you said it yourself. I'm just like Omni-Man. So there's no way for you to win here. So how do you want to do this? The easy way or my way?" With a more serious tone, Stain was unaffected by this, as he raised two of his knives and shouted, "I'll go with the third option. The one where I kill those two fakes behind you." Before charging in, Izuku was caught off guard by his sudden burst of speed. So Stain managed to both push and get past him. This made everyone behind Izuku panic. As Todoroki prepared to make another ice wall, "Wrong," the green-haired boy suddenly muttered, making everyone stop to look at him. "There is no third option. We're doing this my way," he then shouted, before throwing a powerful punch to Stain's jaw. The hero killer was thrown out of the alleyway, before crashing into the ground. Everyone looked at him with both shock and horror. He was defeated, lying unconscious on the ground with a completely broken jaw. It was a disgusting sight. Even Izuku seemed to think so. The alley was silent once more, until Todoroki spoke up by asking, "What did you do?" With a cold voice, Izuku's expression was filled with disgust. As he answered, "I did what Endeavor told us. I went for the throat." With a voice that tried to remain calm, Todoroki looked confused by this, as he then said, "First off, I don't think my father meant it so literally. Second, that's not the throat." With the same cold voice as before, Izuku looked at Todoroki with a weird expression, as he responded by saying, "First off, I know. Second, everything but the power was intentional with that punch." With a voice that reflected his expression, Todoroki looked unaffected by this, as he simply responded by saying, "I find that very hard to believe." Izuku got annoyed after hearing this, but he didn't say anything. He was sure that Todoroki felt the same, that this is not the right place or time to be having a pointless argument. So the two of them instead decided to help Ada and the injured pro that was with him. Backup arrived shortly after Stain's defeat, and they wasted no time in tying him up. With the backup came someone that neither Izuku nor Todoroki expected to see. Bakugo. The blonde was apparently interning with an old pro called Gran Torino, and they both happened to be in the area. Gran Torino immediately began scolding the teens for fighting Stain, but he couldn't do it too much to Izuku and Todoroki since they had both the permission and instruction to do so by Endeavor. The situation seemed to calm down quickly, until one alarming detail was mentioned. "So, where's Endeavor?" Gran Torino asked, wondering why the flame hero wasn't there. Izuku was confused by this, as he asked, "Wasn't he with you?" with a tone that showed his confusion. Both Bakugo and Gran Torino were confused now, as the blonde spoke. "No, he told us to come here before running after some Namu. He also said that he would be here, but we haven't seen him since he ran off." Izuku was even more confused now, and so was everyone else. Endeavor keeps his word, so he should be here. The fact that he wasn't there only gave rise to worry, and that was from everyone's part. "I'll go and look for him. He probably got caught up with something," Gran Torino then said, breaking the silence that they had. "We're going with you then," Bakugo then said, referring to both Izuku and Todoroki as he spoke. The retired hero looked at them with a serious expression, as he said, "No, it's better if you stay here." With a serious tone, Todoroki was the one who responded to this, as he asked, "I'm not undermining your abilities, but what will you do if a strong Namu shows up?" With his usual voice, Gran Torino gritted his teeth upon hearing this, for he realized that they had a point. The retired hero then looked at them, before saying, "All right then, but stay behind me at all times." With the same serious tone, the trio nodded in agreement to this. As Izuku said, "That seems counterproductive, but okay." Before they took off, everyone moved at top speed, looking everywhere they could for any trace of Endeavor. They had no idea of where he could be, but at the same time they had a feeling that he might be in trouble. The teens were all more or less unharmed, so they could fight if it came down to it. The only one of them that was the closest to being injured was Todoroki, but he only had some small cuts and bruises. The group continued their search with haste, growing more and more worried as time passed. They would find their relief, however, when Bakugo shouted, "Hey, I think I've found something." while staring down a dark alleyway. The others quickly stopped and ran towards the alleyway that the blonde was looking through. And they immediately saw something. It was no more than a silhouette. One of a man that was lying on the ground. The group took a deep breath. Before they slowly took a few careful steps down the alley, they quickly realized, however, that it was still too dark for them to see anything. Eventually, Todoroki decided to make some light by making a small flame, only to regret doing it immediately. The flame had lit up the entire alleyway, so they could now clearly see what was on the ground. Everyone froze in horror, and the teens even began to tremble. It was indeed a man, but he was lying down in a big pool of crimson red. "Look away!" Grand Torino shouted to the teens in a panic. They quickly obliged, but they had already seen too much. Todoroki's flame died as quickly as it had appeared, once again filling the alley with darkness. They had only seen it for a few seconds, but it was too much. The image had already been seared into their brains. The image of the bloody and decapitated corpse of the number 2 hero. Endeavor. Outro. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video. So goodbye and have a divine day.